welcome to the Rex Andrews Show. Glad to have you. If you're a first-time listener, welcome to the program and welcome to the conversation. We love to have new listeners. And please remember to comment and start engagement. We like to have that. Always remember, if you do love us the first time you find us, hit us with a 5-star rating. You know, I am a well-dressed beggar. Okay, so those returning, want to thank you. We've really done some amazing growth since we brought the show back on the air, first of the year. We have rocketed up to cracking one of the top 10 fastest growing podcasts out there in the marketplace. And it's all because of you and our great guests. So thank you. All right, a little bit of house cleaning, which you all know what this is. It's please subscribe and then make your comments if you haven't already doing so. Then also, please go to the website and you can see the bios of all the people that we have on the show, information about what they're doing, links to their websites and whatnot, plus interesting things we're doing. I have a whole host of very interesting guests coming up, so just like the one we have today. And if you don't like your current podcast provider, well, don't feel bad. There's 22 others you can get the show from, so we're distributed all over the place. So we haven't quite figured out how to get podcast listeners in Antarctica, but just about everywhere else we are. Okay, fantastic. Got a great guest for us today. This guy's been for several decades in the entertainment industry. He is one of these people who's had all kinds of insights to different things. He's kind of I would maybe call him a little bit ADD. He's done a lot of different things. Okay, now I don't mean that in the sense that he's ADD, but he's just have a wide variety of things he's done over his career. So I'm excited to have him on the show today, talk about his travels, his journey through the entertainment industry. So welcome, if you can, folks, Joel Gibbs. Joel, how are you this afternoon?
I'm doing great, Rex. Thanks for having me here.
Fantastic. Okay, well, we always like to do the play-along game. So if people are multitasking and they might be at their computer or multitasking on their mobile devices, Joel, can you give out your website so if people want to reach out to you? Can you give that to us, please?
Yes, that would be voicesbyjoel.com. Voicesbyjoel.com.
Listen to the man with the silvery voice. This is great. So, all right. So what we do on the show, it's in human interest stories. It's all the fun stuff. If I could interview all kinds of people from past decades, it would be awesome. You know, people who've already passed, but one guy I've always wanted to interview was Winston Churchill. I just have a fascination with the guy. But anyway, so Joel, we like to go back and look at sort of our backgrounds and how we become who we are today. And so we start off the show each time by learning about, you know, where you got some of these influences, because as we grow up, a lot of those things will motivate us or influence us. And so tell us where you were born, where you grew up. Did you have siblings or still have them if they're still with us? What were your parents like? What did they do for a living? Now, as a youth, were you interested in sports or music or harassing, you know, neighborhood kids? I mean, what were you doing as you grew up?
No, I was the harassee. I was too short to be a bully, but that wasn't my sensibility anyway. I born, bred, raised, still basically in the same neighborhood of in Philadelphia.
Congratulations.
So I've been here all my life, living in the suburbs of Philadelphia right now, and really a really lovely childhood. One of those things where, you know, in Philadelphia, we were talking about this earlier, is a city of neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up in an area called the Northeast, which in a sense was like a city of its own. It was like a
Yes.
big insulated sort of village on its own. But that's true in Philadelphia of like South Philly and
Yep.
you know, North Philly and all the different, you know, pockets and what have you. I was not much of a sports guy, but what I was, as it turned out, ironically, was very, very fascinated by everything that had to do with showbiz and the entertainment industry. But most specifically, when I was about 4 years old, I was completely taken over. It was like being hit by the thunderbolt, as they say in The Godfather. By a guy on television who, for you baby boomers who are listening, may be able to relate to this and remember this man. He turned out to be the first ever gigantic ventriloquist star. In those days of early television in the 50s, his name was Paul Winchell.
Okay.
And Paul Winchell had a sidekick named Jerry Mahoney, a Knucklehead Smith. And eventually he went on to do a great many voices in Hanna-Barbera cartoons and things like that. He was the voice of Tigger in,
Oh, oh, really?
yeah, the voice of Tigger in all the classic Winnie the Pooh Disney things. But Paul Winchell, I don't have any explanation as to why I was so drawn to this and so fascinated by it. It was like a tractor beam. It just sucked me in. And within the course of months, I think by the time I was 5, I was a fairly accomplished ventriloquist, still am today.
Wow.
And with all the dummies and puppets and marionettes and that I started collecting, I was assigning a personality and a voice to every one of them, and was sort of inadvertently bringing this sort of unexplainable ability that I've had all my life to do voices.
Oh, wow.
So that's where Paul Winchell, I without question, is like the seed of my existence. Certainly professionally, and in a lot of ways personally too. And inevitably, this is a whole separate story. But before he passed away, I managed to spend a day with him. It was just
Amazing.
absolutely mind blowing. So
Amazing.
that was the beginning, of doing what I do today, amongst other things. That's the seed of the voice work that I've done for so many years.
Okay. Now, did you have siblings?
Yeah, I have a younger brother who I haven't spoken to in a while, but he's out there, and yeah, it's just a great way to. Very fortunate to grow up in the neighborhood I did, because all you had to do was snap your fingers, breathe some air, or open your eyes, and there were at least 15 kids immediately to play
Sure.
with
To play with.
on the block. So yeah, it was a nice, very pleasant childhood, and I have very fond memories of it.
Okay. So, how about your folks, your parents? What did your parents do for a living, or what was your home environment like growing up?
My father owned what I many people still today would call an iconic restaurant in the Northeast, less than half a block from where I grew up. As it turned out, it was a deli restaurant, type of thing,
Okay.
that sort of restaurant. But he opened that in the mid 50s, had it till the mid 60s, and it still today, once in a while, I will go on Facebook and somebody will start a thread in a group, a comment. Anybody remember the Noshery, on Tyson
Okay.
Avenue in the Northeast? And then I usually watch all the comments to see
Sure.
them before I feel like I need to jump in and go, all right, here I am. Let me set this record straight, because
Yeah.
you Rex don't know what you're talking about, and you Joe don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, that was another that was, I guess, aside from getting a lot of attention for the goofy stuff I did, that still today is a source of a little bit of personal fame, that I'm the son of the guy that had that restaurant. So it was kind of cool. My mother would always say the food there is for the customers. We'll eat at home. And she was a horrible cook, so I preferred to eat at my father's restaurant. But
Hey,
it,
mom, can we go down to dad's? Dinner's terrible.
really, if I stand on the lawn and fall down, I will bump my head against the front door of the restaurant. It's
Sure.
that close. Can we? No. Okay.
So your mom didn't want you to be the most frequent flyer at the restaurant, huh?
No, she didn't. My mom was very much different than my father. My father very much lived vicariously through me. He really got me. He was really kind of digging on all the crazy stuff that his son was doing, and truth be told, the attention that it brought, I whatever, either pride or fun he was having with it. My mother was the complete opposite, just never understood it, never got it, never really supported it. But you survived that. My instincts were strong as I got into high school. And by that time, everybody, that I knew that walked the face of the earth knew, Joel's the showbiz guy. He
Okay.
sings and he drums and the ventriloquism and the voices and this and that. And I was like, hey, I'm headed for showbiz.
Yeah.
But my mother had other ideas. I was also well versed in 4 or 5 languages too, which in a way I think may have something to do that I enjoy doing the dialects more than speaking the language. Nevertheless, she had me all cut out and ready to be an interpreter for the UN or work for the State Department overseas speaking language X or
Yeah.
Y or Z.
Sure.
But
Sure.
my father very clearly knew that in my head it was da 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 da
Showtime.
showbiz,
Yeah.
showtime.
That's great. That's
And
great.
eventually I made the transition to what I really wanted to do. So
Okay. So when you got out of high school, did you go off to school? Did you go to work? What was the path like?
the path for me was a little bit confusing because of that dichotomy within our home between the parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always a very good student, did very well in school and honor roll and all that sort of stuff. So academics was not ever an issue. I was accepted to a half a dozen schools, and
Okay.
of course, my mother decided you're not going away to Hofstra or Yukon or whatever, which is really what I needed at that
Sure.
time. I needed some more maturity. Go away, get
Yep.
away,
Yep.
as most kids do. So I ended up at Temple
Okay.
university, right? Still, taking the subway to college to 13th grade every day. And I was enrolled in courses that were really, it was like 13th grade math and history and chemistry. And it's like, what am I doing? I want I want to do the Showtime thing. And I attended class at Temple, I want to say maybe at best for 2 weeks.
Okay.
And it's like an Animal House, the devil and the angel,
Yep.
on the
Yep.
shoulders kind of thing. Well, the little guy in white is saying, "Go to class. You must go to class." And the guy with the pitchfork is saying, "The hell with that. The hell with
Yeah.
that. Do what you want to do." And what I started doing, I within 2 weeks, easy, is I started cutting, not just class, cutting college. And instead of getting off the subway stop at Temple University,
Mm-hmm.
I'd flow down. It was breakfast time, and I'd end up in the center city
Yep.
in downtown Philadelphia, make my stop at a place to have some breakfast, little
Sure.
breakfast going, and finish my breakfast in time by 10 o'clock. And that's when the movies started.
Okay.
And I spent the entire first semester, literally every single day, Monday through Friday, seeing 2 or 3 movies a day.
Oh my
I
goodness.
also wasn't realizing at the time, aside from the fact that I was so incredibly interested in them and loved them and appreciated them, I didn't realize that I would be soaking in all this knowledge about them and turn that into part of my career, what I've done all these years. And I knew that in high school, when you finished a certain period, they handed you a report card and you had to take it home and your parents would sign it. But in this case, you got your report card or whatever you want to call it, your transcript, whatever, in December at the end of the semester. And that's when I thought, uh-oh, what's that going to say when it comes home? And I happened to have been home when it appeared.
Oh no.
Grabbed it and I stashed it because it was all I. Incomplete, incomplete,
Incomplete.
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 Can't flunk me if I haven't attended class.
Right.
And what I did is I went and registered again for the second semester because I was expected to. Whole new raft of classes, never even showed up for day one, went right back to the movies. Only this time when May rolled around, I wasn't quite there at home when the transcript showed up.
Uh-oh. Couldn't
Yeah.
intercept the mail, huh?
Yeah. Didn't intercept it. And my mother was not terribly pleased.
Yeah, I
Let's
can
just
imagine.
let's just say that. So and the rest of the trajectory, I found a private school in New York that was put together actually as a training ground for future directors and technicians at NBC.
Oh,
So
cool.
I went to this school for many months. Ended up hanging out at Rockefeller Center too, and 30 Rock.
Yep.
And when the smoke cleared, decided, okay, it's time to start figuring this whole thing out. What am I going to do? And started actually a broadcast ad agency because I was still under the thumb of my mom. It was like, young men like you don't go to Hollywood and just starve and be waiters and whatever the case may be until you were an actor. Big deal. What? Okay, mom, whatever you say.
Sure.
Anyway, when I finally met Mayoko, I broke off from the Beatles and everything went smoothly from that point forward.
Fantastic. So for those who are not watching on YouTube and are listening to my podcast, just over Joel's shoulder is his ventriloquist dummy. Now, dummy is not something for those who are before this era. That dummy is not just what you call your buddy or your little sister or whatever. Okay, that's actually an affectionate term, dummy. So, what's your castmate there behind you?
Well, there's an interesting story that goes with that guy. That is an absolute replica of the original Jerry Mahoney, Paul Winchell's Jerry Mahoney.
Uh-huh.
And if I let me see if I can set a land speed record here and tell you this story without needing an intermission.
Sure.
A a um, a gentleman in Arizona was making these replicas that were made off the mold off the original Jerry and Knucklehead's heads.
Wow.
And I found him online somewhere in the mid 2000s, I guess. And I'm looking at pictures of these things, and it's like, oh my God, they're dead on. And I really wanted one, but you know how it is. You don't necessarily need it.
Sure.
What got and by the way, when it comes to guys and toys, we don't need any of it. We
None of
just
them.
want it all. And what happened was before this one showed up, I had that encounter with Paul Winchell
Mhm.
at his home in California, which is another separate long story. But nevertheless, we got into a conversation about these replicas, and he said, did you get one?" I'm a little embarrassed. I said, "Well, actually, Paul, he was really intimating that if I had and I had brought it, he'd have signed it. Well, that would have been great. Nevertheless, he passed away about 7 months later. And a couple months after that, I
Mm.
was just noodling around on eBay. Somebody's selling one of these replicas. And
Mm.
us, and allegedly, it's been signed by Paul Winchell.
Mm.
So I thought, well, I know what Paul Winchell's autograph it looks like because I've got 10, 12 different things that he signed for me right on the hood of his car before
Sure.
we left. So I saw the close ups and I went, yeah, I think I need and want to have this. Went to the wife and went, dear, I just kind of wonder. And she goes, I know how much this means to you. And it's signed by Winchell. You didn't have one then. So you really should bid on this. And I'm like, this is why I married this girl. Yeah. So I didn't know much about eBay. Went to a buddy who did. And he said, when does the auction end? I said, tonight at 9:30. He said, don't call me. Don't distract me. Leave me alone. I will get this for you. It's up there for like $900 to start
Sure.
with, which is a little less than a new one. And I'm like, how far do you want me to go? And I said, the wife has given permission up to $2,000,
Okay.
which is mind blowing. Anyway, long story short, not so short. He gets it for me. The thing shows the figure shows up. That's the more PC thing to do. The ventriloquist figure.
Figure. Okay.
Yes,
So it's not a
figure.
dummy. It's a
Yeah,
figure.
it's still a dummy. Anyway, it shows up and it's in mint condition, and I'm thrilled out of my mind, museum condition. And I put it in a chair to where I'm sitting here to my left. And the next day, I called the guy in Arizona Winchell had passed away by this time. And I just wanted to compliment him, just say, your work is phenomenal. And just before I hung up the phone, I said, oh, by the way, I know all the ones that you have on your site have the two-tone blue motif in the suit. This one is actually green gray.
Right.
And he said to me, what do you mean it's green gray? And I said, I don't know how to answer. It's green gray, kind of like the original Jerry colors. So he goes, is it near you right now? I said, yeah. He says, get the head. And I brought the head to the phone. He says, I want you to turn it upside down and look at the bottom of the head stick, which I never would have looked at. Sure. Tell me if you see something there. And I said, yeah. He says, is it a number? I said, yeah. What's the number? I said, 13. He goes, wow, right in the middle. I said, the middle of what? He says, pull down the mouth and tell me if there's some velvet cloth on the mouth, magenta. I said, yeah. He goes, okay. Lift the hair in the back and tell me if you see anything. And I said, I do. He goes, is it Paul Winchell's name in an Art Deco font embossed in the flesh-colored paint? I said, yeah. He goes, and it's signed by Winchell. Yeah. He said, put it back on the chair. I came back to the phone and he said, do you have homeowner's insurance? And I said, I do. He goes, you need to buy more because this is one of only 25 that were made by the disciple of the guy who made the original dummies.
Wow.
And he told me at that time, he said, in a good market, for people who would know you own this, that dummy is worth somewhere between $75,000 and $100,000.
Wow. And you got it for under $2,000. Holy cow. What a story. That's great. Yeah. So, it's really interesting because I was sitting here thinking about, because I'm looking at the dummy and it's like, I remember seeing that on TV.
Yep.
Because now I was born in 65. So, being that I'm 55 now, I can remember watching like variety shows in the evening and Paul would be on it.
Sure.
Or he would appear with Johnny Carson, on the Tonight Show and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was amazing because he could throw his voice like nobody else. And it was amazing to watch him perform. He was
not only was he actually an inventor, which is a sort of a side story with him, but he was incredibly inventive. For people who might like to go on YouTube, you can find clips of Paul Winchell and Jerry Mahoney. And one of the things that he did, which was very clever, he came up with an idea of having Jerry, sitting at it like a table, and behind him was allegedly, crates and things like that. But what happened was when he would go to the table, he would put his hand behind the dummy to be able to work the head accordingly. But behind the crate, you couldn't see it, but there was an operator who would put both of his hands through the dummy's figure so that when he was conversing with Jerry Mahoney, he seemed completely alive. His arms were moving. His
head my goodness.
Everything was a very, very clever thing that he did, and it just brought new life to his sidekick. When I say he was inventor, many people may or may not know that Paul Winchell is the guy that invented the first artificial heart.
Really? Unbelievable.
Yes, he was. He donated the patent to the University of Utah, and that became the Jarvik heart, one of the first hearts that was implanted in people. So, yeah, quite an interesting man.
There's always a connection with creative genius. There just is. It's
he was a savant of if there was ever a savant, he certainly was it. No question.
So fast forwarding through just my memory, which isn't all that great, but I can't tell you the last time I saw a ventriloquist. I mean, it's not an art that's hugely popular anymore.
It hadn't been popular for a long, long time, and it started to kind of come back with Jeff Dunham. And all those specials he does, with the skeleton figure and
Okay.
The Arab terrorist, and
Yeah. Yep.
uh,
Okay. Now I know what you're talking about. Yep.
so Jeff Dunham started to repopularize it, and then over the past decade, you have people like Terry Fator, who was on America's Got Talent and blew everybody away. He was so talented that by virtue of his appearance and win on Got Talent 10, 12 years ago or so, the Mirage in Las Vegas built a theater just for him. So for 10, 12, 15 years, he has been appearing 5, 6 nights a week, making
Vegas.
gazillions of dollars right on the strip in Vegas. And now you see sometimes like that little girl who was also on America's Got Talent, that fabulously talented girl that had the little puffy girl figure and was able to sing with her. So yeah, it is a bit of a lost art. That was actually the reason that Winchell wanted to, instead of making toys, he wanted to try to introduce ventriloquism again in a real, meaningful, professional way. And that's why he got into business with a guy in Arizona to make the replicas, so that people, if they were going to do it, they'd have something meaningful to work with.
Meaningful.
Yeah.
That's great. I haven't been to Vegas in a long time, just because I used to go there for computer shows and Comdex, and
Yeah.
it was not something that was a pleasant experience. You'd be there all week, and
Yeah.
you'd be so tired at the end of the day, you didn't want to go out. And so,
Yeah.
and I'm not a huge gambler, so it just, I'd never been out there. But yeah, that's interesting to see. But yeah, it really is quite a unique art, and there are not as many people who probably did it, because back in the day with Paul, weren't there quite a few people that were doing
There
ventriloquism?
was an endless amount of people. In fact, Ed Sullivan, for those of you that may remember,
Oh my goodness.
Ed Sullivan, who gave us the Beatles and many others, he loved ventriloquists, and
Okay.
on virtually every show, you had Paul Winchell. You had Jimmy Nelson with Danny O'Day and Farfel, Nestes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
all that. You had Senior Wences, the guy that would make a little fist out of his hand, and there was like a cloth body, and he was the guy that had the little box with the guy, "So right, so right,"
Sure, that's right.
That's so, and Ricky Lane and Velvel, and it just went on and on. So every other week at best, there was certainly a ventriloquist on the Ed Sullivan Show up through the early '70s, and then it kind of dissipated, kind of
Yeah.
went away.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that era. You had the Lucy Ball show, and you had later on Carol Burnett.
Mm-hmm.
There were some really good shows that were what I would consider, I don't know, probably even better quality than, we really don't have that genre anymore. Everything's pre-recorded. There isn't that much live performance. I mean, Saturday Night Live is to an extent, but a lot of that's, pretty canned and things. And so,
Right. And it's not a variety show.
No, it's not a variety show at all.
Yeah.
Not a variety show. Not doing skits and variety and stuff like that. So yeah, that was an era gone by. And it would be interesting to see that come back, because I think, people are people. We like what when we want to laugh, we like to laugh. We want to cry, those types of things. And so, emotions and feelings don't change. It's just what's popular.
No. People like to like to be entertained. They do.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, how unique. So did you start performing as a ventriloquist then?
Yeah, as a matter of, well, aside from, the endless impromptu performances I'd be doing in a booth in my father's store, or in somebody's house, or at a family gathering, and it was like being the trained monkey, perform, Joel, perform.
Yeah.
Okay, which is fine because I loved it and ate it up. But officially, in the late '60s, I when all my friends were working at Burger King, making 80 cents an hour, dripping sweat into the grill and
Sure.
into the burgers. I created like a clown character, and when the smoke cleared, for 10 straight years, from '68 to '78, I was Philadelphia's most booked, popular, whatever you want to call it, kids party entertainer.
Oh my
So
goodness.
as a clown, I'd do the ventriloquism. I would do some magic. I would draw some like cartoon characters and give them out, that sort of thing for 45 minutes. And I was making, at the time in the late 60s, maybe 20, 25 bucks cash, for 45 minutes. So after a weekend, a Saturday, Sunday, I'd have a buck and a quarter. I was just rocking, man. That was a lot of money for a 16, 17-year old to have when, all your buddies are basically clearing $2 for a week's work. So I was fat with cash as a teenager doing these kids' parties. And I did not have a Saturday or Sunday off in 10 years unless I X'd it out of the calendar. Otherwise, and, and,
Wow.
and, and mothers would be tearing their hair out. It's like, what do you mean you can't come to my little Davy's parties? I'm booked. I'm going to Rex. Rex is 5 years. Sorry, so that was, and made more money as the years went on. And so but then I got married and had children and all the money just disappeared.
That's right. You had to be serious for a while. Well, it's funny. That was an era. I grew up here in Denver, and we had this character. His name was his show was Blinky's Fun Club.
Yeah.
And it literally was on the air from 1958 until I think it was like 790 something. He was on for a 40-year run. But literally, he was just a television show about birthday parties. And it was a big deal. I mean, it was a really big deal.
Well, every city in the country
had one,
yeah. Whether it's small town, big town, everybody had. A town like Philadelphia had like a half a dozen of them. Other cities maybe less, but that was the thing. Have the kiddie cartoon club, and we're going to take a break and watch the Three Stooges or Popeye or Bugs Bunny or whatever the cartoons.
And I can remember as a kid, because you started telling the story about being the clown guy and going to parties and stuff. It was a big deal. My mom took myself and my best friend, who were born on the same day, July 25th, 1965, down to Blinky's. And we got to sit in the front row.
Yeah.
And watch Blinky and get to shake his hand. And he sang the happy birthday to you. In his own thing. And so, that was the bomb. And funny enough, I think the all-time longest running show now, which I don't think anybody really understands, is The Simpsons.
Yeah. Right.
But this guy had a run here in Denver for 40 years.
That's a long time for a kiddie show, especially the fact that it still existed, whatever, into the 90s when
1998.
It was not de rigueur,
No.
kiddie shows. That's a long time.
Yeah. Denver icon. His family owns a hot dog restaurant of all things. And you would appreciate this with your father's business and stuff. You go in there and they have just all kinds of gourmet hot dogs, and it's a unique place. But all of Blinky's memorabilia is on the walls.
Oh, that's very cool.
They've got his hat in a case, and he had signature makeup and those types of things, and pictures of him with just about everybody you can think of and stuff. So people go there, not as much always for the hot dogs, but just to go check in on Blinky's memorabilia.
I was very fortunate to work with or interview or be with pretty much all of my childhood idols, culminating eventually with Paul Winchell. And the one that I missed is a guy that passed away quite some time ago, and his was the only official puppet-oriented kids show. And I was just the other day talking to somebody and saying, you know what? I think I know how to track down those puppets. Before I hit the coffin, I've got to be in the same airspace as those puppets. So I'll get there. Wish me luck.
Well, because it's kind of in the same genre of stuff, the ventriloquist, and then the whole puppets and stuff, way back in the day. That was part of his show too. They had puppets.
Yeah.
And man, you were as transfixed on those puppets as anything else. And, for a little kid, those things kind of came to life. And, today, thanks to Star Wars and all the special effects and the industries and stuff, people look at that as like, yeah, hokey, Dad, what's that, right? So, but back then, that was the bomb. That
But
was
I can tell you that small children still are drawn to puppets who come alive. I know that because I do it all the time for small children. I do it for my grandchildren. Hey,
great.
listen, my grandkids, they're like 4 and almost 2, and all they want to do is spend FaceTime hours
With
with us.
puppets.
But then again, if Bert, Ernie, Cookie Monster, Grover, Oscar, and all these people lived
Oh
at
yeah,
your grandparents' house, wouldn't you want to hang out on FaceTime with them?
absolutely, absolutely. So, how many kids did you have in your family? I mean, your
I
kids.
Yeah, they're all grown. We have 3 kids and 2 boys and a girl, and the girl with the grandkids lives out in California. We haven't seen them because of this world insanity in a long time, but
Yeah,
now we're getting close.
we're
We're getting
getting
cl-
close.
we're
We're
getting
getting close.
closer. Yeah.
I can't wait till we're off of Zoom and doing things and FaceTime and doing things in person. It's just been a chaotic experience. I think
Yeah.
people are starved for face-to-face human interaction and
Yeah.
just the karma, the feelings of being in a room with somebody else is just completely
Yeah.
different.
Human contact.
Yeah, we're just
It's
everything is so stale right now, but we're getting closer. But so I understand. I
Yeah.
got my first grandson last April, April 25th. So next
Oh,
month he's going to be a year. And gosh,
nice.
today he took his first steps. And
Ah, that's
so
beautiful. That's
yeah,
beautiful.
so the thing I've been that's it's fun about being a grandparent is when you're a parent, and you're young and you have no instruction manual and you're just surviving and every day is just trying to keep your head above water and you're starting your career and you've got money challenges and just everything that's going on, you don't quite absorb the joy of a little one, you know?
My daughter, who clearly sees how much we dote on those 2 little monkeys, and we get it back in return, which is wonderful.
Sure.
Early on, when my grandson was maybe within a year old, she said, like, did did you did you love us as much as, and it's like, well, first of all, coming, who you're dealing with here. That's a bit of a silly question. And I basically related the same thing. I said it's a very distinct difference. When you are a parent, you love your children, but you
Yeah.
are so caught up in a gazillion things that you just listed. Say, when you're a grandparent, all you need is the love.
Yeah.
That's it. The love and the extra time that you have to hang out and play with puppets and cars and
Sure.
dinosaurs and dolls,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's the you don't love them anymore any less, but you
It's
just
just different.
a lot less distraction. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's for sure. That's for
I
sure.
if when people look over my shoulder, I got the pictures. In fact, my grandson's little portraits up there.
Yeah.
I've got 5 kids, and so my grandson Nolan is the first among any of the grandchildren. So he walks on water.
Yeah,
Everybody
he's the king.
he's
He's
the
the
king.
king. That's
So I've
it.
I've teased my family. It's like, well, what's going to happen when the next 3, 4, 5 come along? Because I like big families and that kind of stuff, and you know
Nothing will change.
nothing
Nothing
will
will
change.
change.
It'll
You
all be
just
going. I mean,
you just love them, love them, love them, love them.
yeah, my
That's what you
daughter
do.
my daughter sent us just by Facebook today a quick video of him because he found his toy, stood up against it, and started walking.
That must
Now,
have been great.
yeah, and so
What a
I
great,
could watch that thing 100 times, and that kind
yeah,
of stuff.
yeah.
So
Great
anyway,
feeling.
it's great.
It's a great feeling.
So when you got sort of appeasing your mom, getting back to the story and stuff, you appeased your mom a little bit by doing some, production and management and that kinds of stuff. What was next? Where did your career go from there?
Well, my career basically just evolved along the same lines. What it was, I've always been really a performer. That's what
Okay,
I am.
sure,
But because I was scared silly by the whole parental thing about taking a step and really going to LA or moving to New York or
sure,
where the industries were. I realized, well, I'm not allowed to do that, and I'll have to create something. So I created this little broadcast ad agency, and mainly as an adjunct to be able to give me a platform in order to perform. So I taught myself, recording. The old, you can, if you
I
can't
see
see,
it.
the old reel to reels and the digital
I
stuff. And whatever.
I
So
see a
all
real rule over your
right,
shoulder, and so does anybody else that's watching this on YouTube.
right, and I basically built a business that has been going for the better part of 50 years now. It became rather renowned, certainly in Philadelphia, and as time went on, and digital and the internet and whatever,
Sure.
around the world, basically writing, producing, directing, recording, voicing radio and TV commercials for the most
Fantastic.
part. Other types of projects on occasion, but it almost always revolved around my voice. Not
Yeah.
always the television stuff, but radio. It got to the point where there was nobody else, chasing me, nobody else competing with me, or I should say, nobody else that was doing specifically what I was able to provide, which
Right.
was write it, record it, produce it, voice it. So one of the breakthrough commercials that I did a couple years after I started the my business was for, of all things, a head shop in Atlantic City.
Oh, really?
And this was before Atlantic City had sort of said, no more bongs and pipes and papers and whatever on the
Sure.
boardwalk.
Sure.
Thank you. But this is a guy that I knew from high school. And he called me up and said, yeah, I own a head shop now on the boardwalk in Atlantic City. And I need you to do radio commercials for me. And I said, well, I don't know what you're thinking, but if you've got a head shop, it seems to me that your brand characters should be Cheech and Chong, don't you think? And he
Yeah.
went, well, that's what I was thinking, but do you do Cheech and Chong? I said, yeah, man, I can do Cheech and Chong. It's not a problem. I was going to
Yeah.
do that. And so all of a sudden, everything exploded. And, in Atlantic City radio, at least, small market, um, I was doing it in Philadelphia and other places and what have you, but all of a sudden, the population, especially the owners of businesses, were were slamming the radio station and saying, "How come I get this? If you'd like nice furniture, why not go to Rick's Andrews Furniture?" And you give this guy Cheech and Chong, and they were like, "No, no, 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 no. There's this guy in Philadelphia. I did." They said, "Do you have his number?" Yeah, I think.
Oh, okay. So the radio station started giving you the business for
Yeah,
doing
so
voiceover.
all these businesses were like, "What am I? Chopped liver? Bring him in." And
Yeah.
next thing you know, for most of 20 years, every week, usually on a Thursday, I
Hmm.
would go down to Atlantic City and visit 10, 12, 15, 20, 40 different clients. I built myself like a cottage industry down there as my business and reputation was also growing locally and regionally, and I did that pretty much nonstop through to about 2007, when a interesting and new lucrative opportunity presented itself. So yeah, that next step went from about 1975 to 2007. That went a long
Wow.
30 some years, until we got a bit sidetracked for
Okay.
a dozen years in another project.
So interesting because, I did radio. I had a top rated home improvement show in
Hmm.
Denver. It was
Okay.
the top weekend program. I was Larry King of home improvements. I would
Yeah.
bring in product companies and Home Depot and reps and all this kind of junk. And we just have an interview show. And it was actually very informative. And we were very educational. We got a lot of stuff. But I decided I wanted to be dad coach, so I set made a very difficult decision and set it on the sidelines. But I can
Yeah.
remember
Right.
working with the voiceover professionals
Yeah.
because I didn't want to do all my own, commercials, because
Right.
then it's just everybody gets tired of hearing Rex,
Right.
right?
Right.
Mr. Fix It,
Exactly.
he says everything. Well,
Yeah.
you
We need
need
a
that.
need
You
a
need that.
break from Rex.
We need a break from Rex, so we need that variation. And I was always impressed because those guys were amazing. You'd hand them a script of, what is it, 30 seconds is about 70 or 75 words. And then
Yeah.
you'd go to maybe 135 to 145 words for a 60. And they would just bust this stuff out. It was just impressive. It was
Yeah.
absolutely impressive.
Yeah, well, I don't, that's my entire life. So I don't, I don't have any explanation for why I'm able to do X and Y and Z. It's just something innate. Whether you call it a blessing, a gift, I'm
Hmm.
very grateful and fortunate to have been able to, and still able to do this, endlessly all over the world now, which is
Sure.
an awful lot of fun, and being able to carve a niche to not just be able to do voiceovers, but to be able to do the celebrity and cartoon and characters and the
Sure.
dialects, because that's really what made me. I mean, when you're a straight voice, it's really in the ear of the beholder. Somebody
Sure.
either likes it or doesn't. It's deep, it's
Hmm.
high, it's low, it's whatever. But you can't just snap your fingers and ask for these voices from 100 some celebrity voices, or I
Sure.
need an entire Star Trek crew, or I need a Frenchman, I need an old wizard, I need a British guy, whatever the case
Wow.
may be. So that has been my good fortune to be able to do that my entire life. That was the puppets were kind of the unknowing training ground to be able to do something that I guess I was always able to do. But that's what kick-started it. That's what
Yeah.
what brought it to the surface.
When you did that Cheech and Chong just a couple minutes ago, I'm telling you, memories just went flooding through my head of I went and saw, probably against all rules and stuff, with one of my buddy's friends, because his mom didn't really care what we went and saw the Cheech and Chong films, and
Yeah.
then one of the albums they released, and the Mexican Americans.
Yeah, Los Cochinos and
Yeah.
Babu and all that. Yeah.
So, man, sitting here with you, just like going through old home week, except I hadn't thought of this stuff in ages. So that's fantastic. So now, were you able to, and I know the answer, but were you able to have your own conversation between multiple characters as you're doing things?
Yes. Well, with multi-track recording, I didn't
Okay.
necessarily have to, live switch voices,
Okay.
but I all my life I've been able to do that because of the ventriloquism.
Sure.
When you get down to it, I'm having a conversation with myself.
That's right.
And yet I can tell you that, as conscious or subconscious, unconscious maybe, as I am when I'm doing that, I am I am barely I'm barely conscious of the fact that I am having a conversation with myself. I'm projecting the questions and the answers back and forth between me and my partner, and it never occurs to me that I'm talking to myself. It just
Yeah.
doesn't quite register, except when I'm explaining it to you. But it was, if somebody said, "Well, yeah, baby, you've got to talk about Austin Powers," I really throw me a freaking bone here, so I can switch off without, because you can't layer the voices over each other.
Right.
That's a
Exactly.
little tough. And I can't do ventriloquism while I'm drinking a glass of water, or I'd drown. So that's a
Okay.
bunch of nonsense.
See, here's my version of ventriloquism. Rad drum, rad drum.
Red rum, yeah.
That's it. That's all the talent goes. One finger and one line. Rad
Yeah,
drum, rad drum.
exactly.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's great. Okay, so you got sidetracked on another venture. What was next?
Oh, well, there was a much beloved billionaire
Okay.
here in Philadelphia, had started. He was very enamored with the arts, largely the fine arts, classical arts, what have you.
Okay.
And he knew that the the arts community, there's not a lot of money there. They just do not have a lot of money, and he decided to put together a central fund that would pay for all of their advertising, publicity, PR work,
Hmm.
marketing, everything. the creation even of the content, the TV commercials, radio commercials,
Sure.
billboard, artwork, digital, et cetera, et cetera. And a young lady who had been running that for him in its infancy, when it was not the juggernaut that we inevitably created, passed away at a
Mm.
very young age. And one day I got a call from the billionaire's office, and it was one of those, who is this really?
Yeah,
Oh,
right. Which one,
go,
my friend? Come on,
yeah,
Charlie, stop
come
it.
on. Who's messing with me here? But as it turned out, he had heard about me in the community. A few people had mentioned my name, and it was like, well, why don't we get this guy in here and see if we can, because things are really kind of fried with the unfortunate passing of this young lady. And I went in and met him. We were there together for maybe 5 minutes, just exchanging pleasantries, and he threw it at me. Would you take this thing over? Would you direct the campaign? And
Wow.
I was like Ralph Cramden in my head, going humana, 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 humana.
Yeah.
And we said, well, yes, we would be our privilege. It would be an honor to do this. And the next thing you know, from 2007 till 2019, we uh, we ran this entire camp. My wife and I, along with our son, who was our producer director of the TV commercials, we ran this thing on behalf of about 20 of the biggest museums and performing companies: the orchestra, the ballet, the opera, the art
Sure.
museum, et cetera, here in Philadelphia. We ran that campaign, and it became a huge brand until, unfortunately, the gentleman passed away,
Okay.
and the whole thing just kind of went away into the ether. And that's when I said, okay, uh, guess I'm back to doing voiceovers. And I mean, I had done plenty of voiceovers for all the elements within the campaign over those years.
Sure.
But what I had done is because this was a 29/7, 9 days a week entity, I couldn't really attend to all of the retail client business anymore. I had to concentrate on the arts campaign.
Sure.
And now for the past couple of years, we're back and rocking and rolling, doing the voiceovers and commercials and and much more.
Fantastic. So I'm sure you're aware of these because you're in this industry and stuff. There's been the launch of these really low end portals, the Fivers of the worlds, the Upworks and stuff, where people are doing this type of content. What do you think the impact of your industry is on that? Because I have plus and minus thoughts about that.
What specific content are you referring
Well,
to?
you go out, well, like Fiverr is like a it's really a creative type portal where
Well,
you can get anything done from
yeah,
logos to
yeah, okay,
web design or voiceover. And there's a ton of
yeah.
voiceover people out there.
Well, yeah. The what I actually 20 years ago, with the computer revolution and the internet starting to creep up and whatever, I used to say, anybody with a $10 Radio Shack mic and a $99 piece of software, all of a sudden you've got a recording studio. But
Sure.
that does not make it necessarily good. I mean,
Sure.
talent and create, those are tools. Talent and creativity, if you are lucky to have it, is really the key, and what's going to get you noticed, and why, the reason that people want to consume what you have to say and what you do and what your services are. So I I'm well aware of what's happening on Fiverr and all of these online voiceover sites and things like that. Um, Instant voiceover artists.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to make you start speaking. But the fact is, there is a supply and demand kind of thing going on there, because there are people that don't have traditional advertising and marketing budgets, company budgets, and
Sure.
and they're doing a project, and then they only have $50 or $100 or something for the voiceover for this 8 minute thing that they're doing. And if by virtue of Fiverr and these other voiceover sites or whatever, someone can find something that is pleasant to them for a less expensive price, then that's fine. I'm not puffing myself up here, but I'm not kind of living in that world.
Sure.
I was living in that world 40 years ago,
Sure.
or 40 plus years ago, where it was like, man, I'll take anything just to get the work out and to build a reel, a
Yep.
demo
Exactly.
reel and what have you. So I don't take a negative outlook on that. What I do think is preposterous is a lot of times you will see ads maybe pop up on Facebook or whatever where it says you don't need voiceover people anymore. Just buy our software and
Oh,
talk, and we will convert it into
uh,
and it's like really well. I'll tell you what.
no,
I'll tell you what. Big ad agencies and companies and what have you are not going to be going down that road. They're not
no.
going to be looking for talent that way. So
It's funny you mentioned that today because I had one pop up on Facebook. I was showing a client good ads and bad ads and that kinds of stuff, and there's one, and I'm like, holy cow! And to see software, because I'm sorry, I'm around voice recognition in the early days, optical character recognition and stuff.
yeah.
It isn't the banana. It just isn't. It just isn't.
No, no, it isn't. But again, I'm coming from a, a very lucky landscape in that I was able to provide something that the not ordinary, that's not the right word, but the conventional voiceover person cannot provide. I'm not the only guy in the world that can do
Sure.
impressions and voices and characters and what have you. So if you want and like what I do, I'm one of the few people that
I can
can
do
give
that.
it to you. So that's your prerogative, Mr. or Mrs. Business Person, but I mean, it's used for all sorts of things, not just commercials, for digital and
Sure.
hold messaging
Yep.
and sometimes I will be contacted. Somebody will find me and say, it's my husband Rex's 50th birthday, and he's a total Beatles freak. So can you record maybe a greeting from Paul McCartney? Yeah,
Okay.
sure, no problem. And so being able to do this goofy stuff comes in handy in a lot of different directions.
That's interesting. That's absolutely right. No, I think those portals offer a value. You get what you pay for, kind of
Mhm.
thing. It offers a place for people to get a start. But
Yeah.
I've always wondered about that. How on the earth, if especially if you're North American talent, I get if I can, have somebody make me a logo for $10. Okay, so but if you're in Cebu, Philippines, the standard of living is completely different,
Yeah. Yeah.
than it would be here in the States and stuff. So I struggle, but when I see North American talent on those things and they're charging 15, 20, 30, $50 for something, I'm like, wow, because your
Yeah.
editing time and your production time is going to be
Yeah.
worth a
Yeah,
lot.
and listen, if that's working for a budding voiceover artist or
Yeah.
starting out or what have you, I think it's great. It serves a purpose. I just live in a different ballpark.
Yes, I get it. I get it.
That's all. So I'm not
Yeah.
down on it.
There's all kinds of cars. You can drive a Yugo or you can
Yeah,
drive an Escalade. So
absolutely,
that's
absolutely.
fun. So looking back over your career, did you have a client that was just harder than hell to work with?
Um, I ran into I can't immediately think of anybody that was a complete nightmare, but there were a lot of jerks, you know, and a lot of them I'm not going to identify
Sure. We
I'm
don't
not
have to name
I'm
the
not
guilty.
yeah no well I'm not going to identify the I don't know if the word is genre, whatever, or the category, but there was one particular category that I did more commercials for than any other category by far, everywhere. And I will tell you that the overwhelming percentage of those business owners within that category were the biggest jerks to face. The egos
Oh
were
my goodness.
just tremendous. And the only leverage I only had 2 points of leverage over these just horrendous human beings. One was that I could make them laugh. And the second, really more important, was I see you you want to treat me this way? Go find Paul McCartney somewhere else.
That's
Bye.
right. Yeah.
You know? And I did that much of that didn't really happen, but it was like, can you are you serious? Can we all just treat each other nicely
Yeah.
and respect, just because you own a business like this, you think you're hot stuff. Well, you are not. I am here to tell you, you are not. Thank you. You don't like it? Go yell at one of your employees. You're not yelling at me. I did have actually one incident with a guy that in that industry, he was the new guy in this particular store. Let's just call it store.
Okay.
And he introduced. I had already been working for this store, quote unquote, for years, but he was the new guy in this particular location. And on that very first day, he was throwing his weight around and got angry at me and took his arm and cleared his desk. Phone, pens, papers, books. And I just sat there stunned as he was screaming. And I'm thinking to myself, what? I do commercials for you. Why are you screaming at me? So I let him have it in a quiet and very firm way. And when I also called his boss. So by the next time I was in there, he came around.
Oh,
but you know what? Human beings are human beings. Some
Sure.
behave, some misbehave. It's all part of the course.
So another question I have that comes to my crazy mind is, was there a celebrity that was just the celebrity voice that was just harder than heck to learn? I mean, you just showed a range of all kinds of things, from Cheech and Chong's to Austin Powers to Paul McCartney. Was there one that was just like, wow, this one is a hard one to get?
Not one.
Not one.
And I'll tell you why. You use the operative word there, which is learn. I never focused on learning how to do a voice, take the tape recorder, play it back, imitate it,
Sure.
all that kind of thing that, that worked for Rich Little or other people, which is fine. Whatever your tools are, that's great. I again, just very lucky to be able to just have this ear, and it would go in my ear and then it would hit my vocal cords. I very well may have taken a little time to improve upon it and polish it. But the point is, I think you might agree, maybe everyone would agree, that there's nothing worse than a really bad impression.
True.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
And listen, if somebody does an impression just like that and it's bad and nobody cares, whatever, but when you're a professional and you're being paid for it, you should be pretty close and in nailing this thing. And so I've only done voices that I felt I was confident made the cut.
Okay.
I've been lucky that it's that the call them celebrity voices or impressions, whatever you want to call them, is past 100 on the list. That's which for me is very comfortable and great, and I've been able to do a lot of diverse things with that many of them. But I never wanted to embarrass myself by doing an impression, a voice, or whatever that didn't make the cut, because, well, it certainly, aside from embarrassment, it's not going to further your business or your career by doing, hearing it and go, God, this sucks. This guy sucks. Or whatever. Let's not get this guy.
We're not hiring this guy.
Yeah, I when back in November, back in the fall, pre-election, and especially with the local, elections and the commercials you would see on cable TV, there was, for some reason, somebody decided to resurrect Robin Leach. From Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, in a political commercial. Had nothing to do with me, but I'm watching it, and the voice is just so bad. I felt, I'm thinking to myself, I wish you'd have called me. I would have done, I think, a better job, but it's like, aren't you listening to this? Aren't you hearing what I'm hearing? Ouch. So
yes.
Yeah, I've never really learned. I've developed them to some degree, but I've never come across a voice and said, all right, forget it. There are voices where I knew I could, like I did so many presidents up through Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, by the way, he was financially very good to me.
Yeah, I bet.
Thank you, Blue Dress. Thank you, Monica.
Yeah, no kidding.
Nevertheless, but I could never do Bush. I could never do W. I couldn't do Obama. I couldn't do the former occupant. I can't do the current occupant. So, oh well. I wish I could have. It could have been lucrative in some way, but I realized can't do them, so I won't do them.
That's good advice. That's good advice. What an amazing talent you have, and it's so unique because what's great about what you can do is you can do this forever. You know. Now our voices change as we age, but literally you could do this type of work until the day they put you in a box. I mean, that's pretty much a great talent.
Well, thank you. That's a very nice compliment, and yeah, that's one of the other fortunate part is that until the voice goes or the brain goes or they both go, for all I know, they are going. Ask the wife; she'll tell you for sure.
That's right. That's right.
But yeah, this is and here I am in my home recording studio. You're actually looking at some of the goofy stuff, but for those of you who are watching on Zoom, this is actually what I'm facing, what I'm looking at.
Oh wow!
That's actually the recording, the actual recording studio, and so I don't have to wear pants or
Nope.
shoes,
Nope.
and everything's here, all the comforts of home, literally, no tolls, no gas,
Yep.
and hey, in the middle of an unfortunate health crisis that we've been having, I'm cool. I
That's
can
right.
work. It's all good.
That's right. You don't even have to tuck in your shirt or wear shoes, you know? So.
I decided to wear a proper, well, actually, my wife would certainly not have let me do this on Zoom unless I was wearing something reasonably
Reasonable.
proper.
Yeah,
So
that's for sure.
this shirt is for you, Rex.
Yeah, well, thank you. I thank you. I get teased a lot. Well, why isn't your shirt buttoned up all the way? I don't need to. It's below the desk. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
Does anybody know that you're wearing basketball shorts about half the time? No, it just doesn't quite stuff. So, it's been interesting. I think we've seen from the pandemic with so much things being done virtual and Zoom becoming, it's like the word Xerox. Xerox was a word that was used for decades after, Xerox was nowhere longer, but that was just what we did. So
Yeah.
Zoom has taken over that space and culture. But I think the interesting thing about it, which I kind of like, to be honest with you, we've gotten accustomed, thanks to the pandemic, we watched the evening news on Zoom.
Yeah.
And you saw the weatherman in his basement, and you saw the sports guy in his basement, and the main, anchor person in their basement, and you're like, well, they're just average people. And then if you go out on the YouTube and look at almost anybody out there, their podcasts that are dropped on YouTube, they're just like this.
Exactly.
We've gotten accustomed to it.
Yeah, we certainly didn't want the pandemic, but
No.
I am Zoom has become a really cool tool for me for many different reasons. I've been doing online Zoom classes for different universities and schools on James Bond and on The Godfather and on the Beatles and movies and all this crazy stuff that's stuck in my head. And then all of a sudden you've got 100 people in front of you listening to you and watching you spew all this stuff and sharing your screen and whatever. And I'm having a ball doing it. It's actually very much like what you're doing. These classes that I'm doing is an extension of the radio show that I used to do for so many years, the talk radio show that I used to do. And it's a visual version. So I enjoy it. I like it.
Well, I really appreciate because the logistics are so easy. There's no commute time, there's no prep time, there's no setup, there's, trying to get things, schedules coordinated. Look, I just send you a link, you schedule it, we're off and done. And I have had so many people, I've been fortunate because I've just been a person like sort of a super networker. I know lots of people, former Denver Bronco people and all kinds of business leaders and political folks and stuff. They're so thankful because it's like, wow, I can just do this. I don't have to, It used to be if you were going to appear on someone's show, it was like a half-day event. You had to drive there. You had to make sure you're wearing the right stuff, and you didn't, all those parameters. And now it's just like, wow, let's get it going.
instant gratification. But it's also been a great tool for families, to be together, for learning, for entertainment.
Yeah.
And I really, I think it's going to evolve even further and bigger because, yeah, we have gotten used to a lot of things, not so begrudgingly. The
Yeah.
pandemic, of course, begrudgingly, and all the
Yeah.
horrible things that go with it. But in terms of technology, you read about, this theater chain is going to open up the movies again, and this one is going to. I am a movie freak, and I'm not going to the movies. I just sit back and, with my streaming services,
Yeah.
and I'm also lucky as a member of the Critics' Choice Association. The studios constantly are sending DVDs, screeners, and subscriptions to these things to make sure that someone like me and my fellow members watch these movies. And you want to pause it?
Yep.
Take a break, get a little chocolate cupcake. Okay. And we're back. So I'm not also I as I said, I've had my studio and office in my home for over 40 years. So when I talk to people and they're going out of their minds being cooped up, in their homes because of COVID, I'm going, I don't see the issue because I'm used to this.
That's right.
Although I'm, there's a few restaurants and some things I need to eat soon,
Yes.
quickly. I've had it. I'm exhausted. I want my cheesesteaks.
Yeah. So it's been interesting during the pandemic here and reaching out and booking people on the podcast. I've run into several people right here in Colorado, right in the Denver metropolitan, Boulder, metropolitan area.
Yeah.
And even though they could come over and stuff, no, we just do it by Zoom. It's just
Yeah.
easier. It's just faster.
Yeah.
And they've made some nice tools. It's really been interesting because I've been technology in parallel to doing this and doing some construction businesses. I mean, I'm one of these ADD entrepreneur types, but the one thing that I really have enjoyed about this is the fact that it allows me to put the things together so quickly
Yeah.
that I couldn't do before. And then
Right.
that is just great. Now, yes, I want to go to favorite restaurants and I would love to go to a concert. And I would love to go watch the Denver Broncos or the Avalanche or something. That would just be awesome to do those things. But I think it's been
have to be patient.
yeah, I know.
You must be patient.
We must be patient.
You're going to have all, you're going to get back to all that. I promise. I promise.
Well, we're fairly open here compared to a lot of places. The governor made a comment today that they're going to have they think they have pretty much all the state mandated restrictions lifted by mid-April. So it will be interesting. But, when you talk about the movie industry, I don't know if movie theater is going to come back.
I don't really, I've been awash in the movie industry for many decades, so I know a lot about it. I know a lot of people in it. And my intuition tells me it's not going to come back in the near future. No. I think I mean we don't know what the future holds for us, health wise and variants and booster shots and this and that and whatever. But quite frankly, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but they want to open sooner than later, and I'm not sure it's the best idea. I'm sure not going to go out there, into they're these days, and it's happened already in the past dozen years or whatever. You go to a movie theater, you could get shot. Then again, you can just go to the market. You can go here or there, whatever. So we won't get into that. But
I'll tell you a quick story around that.
Yeah.
So Colorado, we had the Aurora theater shooting.
Yes, that's what I was thinking about.
And living here, that was prevalent on the news. I mean, you couldn't escape it.
Right.
I don't remember. Let's see. Do you remember what year that was? Was it around
2008?
2008. Okay.
The Dark Knight.
Right.
It was the Batman
That's right.
film.
So, you are a movie guy. So my son, he's easy to remember how old he is because he was born in 2000. So whatever year it was.
Yeah.
So he was 8 years old, and we went to a movie theater about 3 weeks after that happened.
Wow.
We sat down as a family. And about a minute and a half in there, you could just tell he was nervous. He was anxious.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he bolted up and
Yeah.
ran out of the movie theater.
Understandable.
Absolutely ran. And
Yeah.
I could not get him to come back in.
Yeah.
So
Well,
we had to go home and
yeah.
then come back and pick everybody else up because he
Yeah.
would not go into a movie theater.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, whatever we can do to help our fellow brothers and sisters and be decent and be kind and hope that we're not caught in the middle of these horrible things that are happening in our world
Yeah.
that's really number one. But that's my job, is just to keep people laughing.
Well, you do a good job. You're very entertaining, and I've enjoyed our time together today because it's been fun to look back, because you're coming from an era where there were a ton of live shows. Okay.
Yes.
Everything from the Carol Burnett show to Hee Haw. I mean, can you imagine Hee Haw? It was a live show.
Yeah.
I mean, Lawrence Welk. I mean, all of those things were the evening show, the late night shows, the Johnny Carsons and stuff like that. Those were not taped. Those were live.
Yeah. And I'm a baby boomer. I lived through it all. I've seen it all. Every bit of it.
And there's an art to that, and I miss it because there was an element. People made mistakes. I mean, can you remember back when like Tim Conway was almost laughing so hard because the scenes were so funny,
and he would be Harvey Korman,
Harvey Korman
thing, right? All that
Two
stuff.
of those could be laughing so hard they're about ready to wet their pants, and they were still trying to complete the skit.
There's a lot of that type of culture, entertainment culture, that I think we're missing today. At any time, there's good stuff and there's bad stuff, and funny stuff and stupid stuff.
Sure.
So it's not all good, but there is a lot that would be wonderful, to
revisit
back and embrace. But people are a little too busy, with their thumbs on their iPhones and their iPads and whatever. And it's, hello, I'm talking to you. When you go into a restaurant and you see mom, dad, brother, and sister, and all four of them
all four heads down.
Or it's like, okay, conversation, something. Well, another rabbit hole.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're going to cut it short here for this time. I'm going to have you back because there's more entertainment things I'd like to talk to you about. You've been a fabulous guest and very generous with your time this evening.
Thank you,
so it's been great to have you. So one more time, will you, if you could please, give out your website so people want to get in touch with you, they can.
Absolutely. The website is voicesbyjoel.com.
That's pretty easy. We don't have to stumble through that one. So thank you, Joel. It's been fabulous. I will get you back. There's a lot to unpack here. I love to talk to interesting people. And
thank you.
You have a very, very unique talent set, and it's something you can be very proud of because there's just not everybody that can do what you do.
Thank you, Rex. It's very nice of you to say, and it's been a pleasure being with you and your audience. And I'll be back.
That's right. You will.
I promise. That would be great.
Fantastic. Okay, folks, we'll call that a wrap for today on this episode. Don't forget to stop by the website, rexandrewshow.com. Check everything out. We'll have all of the information up there. You'll be able to find Joel's bio and all of his links and all that good stuff. And don't forget that as it is in this world, at least for me, there are too many interests for just one lifetime. And we always look around the corner and there's another discovery. And we had one of those today. So I appreciate that, Joel. And I'll end this all by saying the things I always say at the end of every show. Oh, wait a minute. I have one more question to ask. I almost ran past. But see, here's the good part. We don't have to record and cut tape, right? Okay, so I ask everybody, and you've been so generous with giving us a peer into who you are, okay? There's this concept out there called a bucket list, and everybody thinks about all these things they're going to do before they put you in a box, right? Or grind you up or burn you up or whatever it is going to be. And those things we would love to do, okay? But there's always an opposite of everything in the universe, right? So the opposite of a bucket list of things you'd love to do is probably things you don't want to do. It rhymes with bucket, starts with an F, but I'm not going to say that, okay?
Okay.
So what might be on your F-it list, okay, that you just have no interest in doing?
That I have no interest in doing?
Yeah, or don't want to do.
That's a very intriguing one. Was something I don't want to do. I don't want to bother to learn to swim. I can't swim at this point. there's no point in it. I'll stay I'll stay in 3 feet of water with my grandchildren and they'll be happy. So I don't want anybody to bother me and say, you really need to learn how to swim.
Okay, that's fair enough.
I don't know. That's a goofy answer, but
no, there's no, there's no, what's that line? Was it, was it Chevy Chase that was saying there's no stupid questions. There's just stupid people asking questions. Yeah. So there's no stupid answer. There's just stupid people giving answers, right?
Yeah. Given some preparation, I might have come up with something a little more intellectual, but that's.
Oh, no. That is a complete bomb on the side question to throw you for a loop. And I'll guarantee you this next time, Joel, when anybody talks about a bucket list, you're going to come back to this quick conversation.
Right? It sounds good to me, for sure.
Thank you very much. And again, folks, so we'll end it up here saying the 3 things we always say at the end of every show. Be safe, be bold, and make it a great day.